Hey, 7th grade, we're talking about Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe, chapters 13, 14, and 15. So, chapter 13, we go back to Edmund. Remember, she's with the witch and the dwarf, and they're having a conversation about what to do with Edmund. They have differing opinions. So, your dwarf thinks he can be a bargaining chip. They should keep him alive and use him that way. And for the witch, she just looks at him and thinks, as long as he's alive, then the prophecy can still come true. So for her, the best thing to do is to kill him because there's 4 thrones. So if she kills him, then there's only 3 kids. And in her mind, that means the prophecy cannot be fulfilled. Okay. And in there it says, I would like to have done it on the stone table itself. That is the proper place. That is where it has always been done, which is a little bit of foreshadowing for later in your chapters. But of course, they know they can't make it there. So at that moment, once she's decided that she's going to kill Edmund, here's the wolf coming in there. Think back, you had Maugrim die, and this is the second wolf that runs off, and Aslan tells his creatures to follow. So the wolf gets there, tells them that Maugrim is dead, and he's telling the queen and the dwarf to get out, run as fast as you can, they're coming. So for her, because she knows she's about to kill Edmund, she tells him, no, we're not running. Get all of my people together, get everyone together. We're going to have a battle. So the wolf leaves to do that for her, and then they ready Edmund to be killed. Okay, so there's the knife being sharpened, etc. And then as he realizes that what's about to happen, in comes the group. He doesn't really know what's happening because you'll notice it says the place where they are is extremely dark and hidden. So these deep, awful deeds are being done in a deep, awful place that's extremely dark. That's on purpose, okay? And so when the group comes in, of course, Edmund has no idea really what's going on because he can't see. But eventually he finds himself being untied. He hears the witch scream. And then he also realizes, as he's hearing all the words, that they've lost the witch, okay? So despite that fact, they're heading back to the stone table to deliver Edmund. And then it says a stump and a boulder start moving and talking. So you find out the witch, because she still has her wand, can change them. She's changed both of the dwarf and herself, the dwarf and herself, into a stump and a boulder. Okay, so you know that they're still alive and she still has her wand as far as power is concerned. So we go back to the camp at the stone table. Everyone wakes the next morning to the news that Edmund is there. They saved him, but as they wake up, and when I say he, I mean Edmund is talking to Aslan in private. And once their conversation is over, he says, here's your brother, and there's no need to talk about what's happened. It's done and over with. And of course, Edmund apologizes. The kids, forgive him, but they don't really know what to say. It's kind of awkward. And then in that awkward moment, you have the dwarf step into the camp and ask if the witch, or he calls her the Queen of Narnia, can come in there and talk to Aslan without being harmed. So the one condition is that she has to leave her wand away and she's allowed in. So this is the first time the other 3 kids have seen the White Witch, and it says shudders ran down their backs at the sight of her face. They know immediately she's evil, okay? And as the 2 are facing one another, it says the witch cannot bear to look straight in Aslan's face and look him in the eyes. So she talks about Edmund because she announces, you have a traitor there, Aslan, and everybody knows who that is. And she reminds Aslan of the deep magic, all those strange symbols that are on the side of the stone table. And she kind of snarkily says, you haven't forgotten about that, have you? The engraving that's on this secret table, and it says, tell you what is engraved on the scepter of the emperor beyond the sea. And you'll notice that individual is mentioned over and over again in here and in the series, okay? So you hopefully you have some guesses to who that is, and I'll bring it back up in just a little bit. And so she says, "You know that every traitor belongs to me as lawful prey, and that for every treachery I have a right to kill." Okay? And it's true. Even Aslan says so. And she says, "The human creature is mine. His life is forfeit to me. His blood is my property." So, because of the sin that Edmund has committed, he has a penalty to pay, or that he owes to the witch, which is his life, his blood. Okay? So, as far as the individuals that are surrounding the creatures like the bull, they don't get it. And she says, Aslan knows that unless I have blood, as the law says, all Narnia will be overturned and perish in fire. And Aslan says it's true. So, because of Edmund's wrongdoing, his sin, the consequence is that there has to be a payment. There has to be blood payment for what he's done. Otherwise, Narnia will be consumed with fire. Okay? So at this point, they're trying to figure out what in the world they can do. Is there anything we can do about the deep magic? And Aslan says there's really nothing he can do, and there's like a frown on his face. And it says the whole time, Edmund doesn't look at anyone. The only person he looks at is Aslan. He doesn't look anywhere else. And it says he has this choking feeling, but he doesn't look anywhere else but at Aslan. So at this point, Aslan wishes to speak to the witch alone. And when he comes back, he announces that the witch has renounced the claim on Edmund's blood. And of course, they're all excited. They feel relief. But then you look at the witch and it says she has a fierce look of joy on her face. And as she leaves, you know there's something going on. Okay? So, chapter 14, Aslan says they need to move away from the stone table because it's going to be needed soon. So, more foreshadowing for you there. Okay? And as they're walking to the new place to set up their camp, Aslan is walking with Peter and he's discussing with him options as far as the battle that's coming up between them and the witch and her group. And he's giving him details, etc. And for Peter, he's like, "Why are you telling me all this? Aren't you going to be there, Aslan?" And he responds, "I can't promise you that I will be." And so it says after this, and their walk to the camp and that night, everybody, there's just this feeling of heaviness and sadness, okay? Um, and when they make camp, Peter's worried that the witch might, come and make an attack, and Aslan promises him that she won't. And it says Aslan's mood affected everyone. People were uncomfortable. There wasn't a whole lot of talking going on, and um, it's kind of reminiscent of when Jesus knows that he's going to be taken, and that he basically that they're going to come and arrest him. He knows what's coming, okay? And so at this point, you have Susan and Lucy who can't sleep, okay? And they have a horrible feeling, and it says that they know it has to do something with Aslan. And it says either some dreadful thing is going to happen to him or he's going to do something dreadful. And of course, we know which one that is. So because they can't sleep, they get up and they are going to go check on Aslan. And that's when they see him walking away from the camp into the woods. So in your mind, picture Garden of Gethsemane, okay? Jesus is praying to God, "Please, if there's any way this cup can pass from me." And he asks some of the individuals with him to stay up to watch guard because, I mean, he knows what's coming, okay? And it says that in here, Aslan allows them to stay with him, but that he just feels sad and lonely. Okay. So if you remember Jesus praying, is there any way, God, take this cup from me? And it says through the whole thing that he just, I mean, imagine that you're going to die. It's going to be an awful death. And he's praying to his father, please, if there's any way, take this from me. And that's how this is this moment with Aslan. He says he feels sad, he feels lonely, um, but there's nothing that can be done. Okay. So he allows them to walk with him. They put their hands in his mane, and he says, you can stay with me until I tell you to leave, and then you must leave. And so they find themselves back at the stone table, and he tells the girls that they must stop there, and whatever happens, and we know what happens, that they cannot be seen. Okay? So the girls cry, of course, and Aslan leaves, and the girls hide. And then they witness what happens to Aslan. So around the stone table, you have the witch with all of her um, group there. Everything from, it says, horrors to sprites, hags, ogres, etc., the wolves. And at this point, when he walks up, it says all of them are afraid, even though they know what's about to happen. It says they're all struck with fear. So that tells you the power that Aslan has, that even the most evil, powerful beings in this book pause and know that he is more powerful than they are. So in this moment, while the girls are watching, they bind his paws together, at this point they drag him towards the stone table. And then this should be enough, but they add things like shaving him and putting a muzzle on him to mock him. The same idea of Jesus and the crown of thorns. Like, are you king? Why don't you save yourself? And they give him the crown of thorns. And so, just like they mocked Jesus, they're mocking Aslan. They shave him. They put the muzzle on him. They crowd around him. They kick him. They spit at him. Okay, it's that same. It's a parallel between those two scenes. Okay, and eventually at the end, as Susan and them are watching, of course they're completely upset, and the witch readies herself, and it says Aslan looked up at the sky, still quiet, neither angry nor afraid, but sad. Okay, um, kind of the same idea. Jesus on the cross when he looks up at his father, he's not angry or afraid. He knows this has to happen, but sad that it does. Okay, so here you have the witch say, you have lost your own life and you have not saved his, and that knowledge despair and die. So in this moment, the witch thinks she's won. Just like when Jesus dies, Satan thinks he's won. Okay? And Aslan's killed, and his blood is the sacrifice for Edmund's sin. Okay? Just like Jesus's blood is the sacrifice for all of our sin. So as Aslan dies, we have chapter 15, and the girls are hide because at that point the witch gathers all her creatures around her and they're off to battle Peter. Okay, like they want at this point with Aslan dead, they think this is the time to strike, that they can win. And of course, the girls are completely upset. They run in, and remember, it's still kind of dark outside, but they can still like see the outline of his body. Okay, so they go in and they're taking um, the muzzle off of him, just like taking Jesus off of the cross and preparing his body. Okay, so they take the muzzle off of him and they're trying to get the knots off, but they can't get them off. And so this is where you have them. It's kind of like the feeling. This is what C.S. Lewis says. It's like you've been up all night and you've cried and cried and cried and you have no more tears to get out. This is where they are. And they can't get the bindings loose off of him. And so all of a sudden you have all these mice appear and they figure out that they're there to take off all the cords. and to free Aslan of his bindings. So after they do that, the girls start to notice that it's getting brighter outside, and it says, when the light grows, they can see his face better, and every moment his dead face looked more nobler and nobler and nobler. Okay, it should like more noble. Okay, so his face is changing the lighter it gets outside. And then we have the birds singing outside, and Lucy and Susan, they say they're cold, and so they start walking. Okay, so they walk about and they go up the hill and they're looking down. And then in that moment, it says the sky turns red, and then they hear a huge crack behind them, a huge noise. And they realize that the stone table has been broken. Okay, so think in the Bible when the veil is torn at the Temple of Jerusalem, it's that same concept. Okay, and in that moment, when the table's broken, they turn around and they're trying to figure out, is this something else? Is this part of the magic? And at that point, they hear the great voice behind them, and they turn around and there's Aslan, and he's back. Okay. And for the two girls, they can't understand. They watched him die. And they're like, you're not dead? And for Susan, like she doesn't want to say it, but in her mind, she's like, are you a ghost? Like, think doubting Thomas, like, I want to see the scars. Like, is he real? I want to see him myself. And it says Aslan walks up, licks her forehead, and she feels the warm breath. And so they know he's back. So it says that although the witch knows part of the deep magic, what she doesn't know is that if a willing victim who had committed no treachery, think Jesus, okay, a willing victim who had no sin, okay, was killed in a traitor's stead, the table would crack and death itself would start working backward. Okay? So he knows if a willing victim with no sin takes upon that burden and dies, then they would pay the penalty, but then they would defeat death. Sound familiar? Okay? So, same idea with Jesus. He was a willing victim, pure, spotless, no sin, and his blood paid our debt, and he defeated death that way. So, of course, all three are excited. They run around, they chase, and they're having a good time. And then Aslan says, we have a journey. And so the girls get on, and he runs as fast as humanly possible. And then eventually they find themselves at the witch's home inside her courtyard where all those statues are. Okay? And those are your 3 chapters.